everybody. It is 7 p.m. in NYC and 4 p.m. in Western Sonoma County, California. I'm Sam Kimball from New York Wine Events. Thank you for joining us on virtual day trip to wine country. We are here for contemporary and elegant wines from the left coast. Some really extraordinary selections. You're going to find out a lot more about them as we go. We are headed to Healdsburg, California in Western Sonoma in the Dry Creek Valley. And I have a fun fact about Healdsburg, California. Due to its three most important wine producing regions, the Russian River, Dry Creek, and Alexander Valley AVAs, Healdsburg has been continuously awarded one of the top 10 smallest towns in America. How about that? Very, very cool. Fun fact about Healdsburg. This evening, our theme is going to be focused around Sonoma, but also wine grapes from vineyards with really interesting and distinct backgrounds and from areas all around the state of California. So welcome one, welcome all. It's great having you guys all tune in. We are going to take any questions and comments on the fly in the chat. As we go, we'll answer those and we'll respond as we go during the session. Also, if you would hit the chat right now and tell us where in the world you are tuning in from. It is great to have everybody. Specifically, where we are going, we're traveling virtually this evening to BACA Wines, a great winery with a family tradition where the wine is fun and they don't take themselves too seriously. But to that end, you will see that all of their wines are named after games. For example, the rosé that we're going to be profiling and tasting virtually this evening is called Ring Around the Rosé. And one of the Zinfandels we're profiling is called Double Dutch Zin, excuse me. That said, don't let these playful names fool you. These folks are making some seriously good wine. And BACA is, as they like to say there, an adventure in Sonoma County. So BACA Wines, it is great to see everyone. Hi, Myra, Scott. We got Florida in the house, Jackie, Pennsylvania, Long Island's, awesome. North Carolina, Kathy, welcome. Welcome, Carolina. So let's take a look on the map where we are headed, because I think it's always good to ground ourselves in is in terms of wine and wine producing. So you see in my background here, the red map pin, that is where BACA Wines is, right there in Healdsburg. So we're about 70 or so miles north of San Francisco, and a beautiful part of Western Sonoma County. You'll see, we'll get a chance to look at some pictures in a bit. There's fog that comes in over some of these vineyards in the morning because you're north of San Francisco and you're not far from the Pacific Ocean. You're getting that maritime air, and in the morning the fog can roll in. So it's absolutely, absolutely beautiful. Right now I'm going to play a video that gives you a little bit more flavor of all about BACA. And it's actually a video that talks about their wines and their wine club. But most importantly, you'll get a sense of the place and the philosophy of BACA Wines. So here goes. We're gonna have fun and play this video here. Bear with me 1 second. I'm gonna share my screen. And all right. All right. Bear with me a sec, everybody. We just have to get the screen share going. All right. And lights, camera, action. Here we go.
Great wine is a truly immersive experience. It tells the story of the land. At BACA Wines, the art of creating great wine is in our DNA. That's why each of our wines is crafted with the intention of perfection. When you sign up for a BACA Wines membership, you're not just joining another wine club, you're becoming a member of the BACA family, with all the benefits that membership entails, including access to limited production renowned wines, discounts, and exclusive wine country experiences. Signing up for a BACA membership is simple. Just tell us where to send the wine and how many bottles you'd like each quarter. Your wine is shipped safely to your doorstep. Your personal membership associate will be able to assist you with everything from selecting wines to ensuring quality, so you can experience the quality and luxury that defines BACA Wines and join a community of some of the most passionate wine enthusiasts the world over.
Yeah, that really, I love that video because you get so many great shots of the vineyards, and it does give you a sense of the philosophy. BACA is an offshoot of wineries that have been around for a while, but called HALL Wines and WALT Wines, which it's all owned by the same family, HALL Wines, WALT Wines, and BACA Wines. And it's a brand that's pure California through and through. They are high quality without the pretense, without the pedanticness of some wines, carefully crafted, but also playful. And I want to let everybody know, if you want to learn more about BACA Wines, you can always go to their website, which I have here in my background. And there is a special offer tonight on these wines. You can get $1 shipping with a wine purchase of 4 bottles or more, which is automatically applied at checkout. We'll put up this URL screen again later on, but it's bacawines.com. And that's a place you can learn a lot more about this wonderful, wonderful winery. Without further ado, I would like to bring on our guest this evening, Jennifer Brown, the director of BACA Wines, also a vintner. Welcome, welcome, Jennifer. It is great having you here tonight.
Thanks so much, Sam. It's great to be with you.
We're really excited. Where does this broadcast find you?
Oh, in Healdsburg. I live in San Francisco, but I'm in between Healdsburg and my home most of the time.
And you're the wine director, right? I mean,
yeah,
this is your baby. What would you say, somebody who knew nothing about BACA Wines? What is the calling card? I mean, if you were to tell somebody in a word or two, like, what's BACA all about to you? Mm-hmm. What is it?
Yeah, I say contemporary and elegant. We, as you said perfectly before, we make serious wine, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. We like making wine for people who are young at heart and like to adventure. For example, the first wine we're going to try tonight is our Ring Around the Rosé. And when we were thinking about bottling it, I chose to put it in a can. This is probably, one of, actually we won the best rosé in a canned competition, but it's really high quality wine, but it's unpretentious. And I think that's really our calling card.
I think that's really smart. I mean, I think, the thing that we always hear from wine enthusiasts is they want to drink really high quality wines, but they want them to be accessible in terms of what the wines are all about, the approach to winemaking and flavor. And it's great to get into, really high-end wines and wines that have tremendous complexity. But I think the thing that I hear a lot is that wine enthusiasts don't want to be wine geeks. They want to be wine lovers who gain knowledge.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. And I think as we're now, I would say experienced wine drinkers and also people that are new to drinking wine, everyone always wants to learn. You can always learn more. If you talk to some of the most celebrated sommeliers in the world, they'll say they're also constantly learning. So I think that's something that we all share, is a thirst for knowledge, to learn more about wine and the places that it comes from.
Absolutely. And we see that with we have a tour part of our company that we do day trips to the vineyards in New York State. And we also now do trips internationally. And I think the thing that is most fun, at least for us to see, is our customers and our guests interacting with people like you who work at the winery, who craft the wines, going into the tank room or the barrel room and understanding, how these beverages are made and what goes into it. And it brings a whole another level of enjoyment and awareness for them. So how did you come up with the name BACA Wines?
Well, it was a long process, I have to say. I mean, I think I spent more time naming this wine than I did my children. But we wanted a name that called attention to the fact that Zinfandel, because we knew we were going to be Zinfandel focused, although we do make other varietals too. We wanted a name that really called attention to the fact that Zinfandel was a California grape and has a lot of heritage. And so when we were coming up with the logo, just grab one of our bottles, we chose a stacked logo for BACA. So BACA means berry in Latin. If you're familiar with the wine god Bacchus, BACA is the root of that. And Zinfandel has a really long history in California. It came over to California during Prohibition times. It's the only vine that can actually be old in California. Cabernet, usually you have to rip up the vines after 20 years or so. Zinfandel, on the other hand, we have over 100-year-old vines in California that's that old. And so, so really, we love this name for its history, its heritage, and also the play of California. I may have mentioned this before, but Zinfandel is something that's really important to me personally. My grandparents, who were the ones that got us into the business, originally planted Zinfandel. So when we were looking to start a new wine brand, in Zinfandel in particular, it was something that I was really passionate about, to bring things full circle from where we started in our business.
Now, do you guys, when and it's coming back this January, which is exciting, do you guys exhibit BACA Zinfandels at the Zinfandel Experience in January in San Francisco?
We do. Yeah, we've participated for the last 2 years, and it's been so much fun, and we will definitely be back there again.
So I have a shameless plug for our friends and partners over at Zinfandel Advocate. Not been to Zinfandel Experience, as it's called, in San Francisco, which happens in mid-late January every year. It is like the Woodstock of, I would say, for me as an East Coaster, it's like the Woodstock of like California red wine. It is 120 tasting stations of some of the finest wineries in the entire state of California. Everybody's there. Turley, Chateau Montelena, Ridge, Lang Twins. I mean, you name it. Every region, Paso Robles, Lodi, Napa, Sonoma. And so that's a fun event. And I'm looking forward to going this year. And I'm going to make sure I stop at the BACA Wines.
Please do. And if any of you guys that are watching come by, please come say hi. I'd love to meet all of you guys in person too.
So that's just a fun plug for if you want to really dig into California red wine, and specifically Zinfandel. So Diane asked a question. The name of the event is the Zinfandel Experience. It's also known as ZinX, like FedEx, but ZINEX. Zinfandel Experience. It happens in January in San Francisco. I see that Glenda is watching. Glenda, put in the chat, if you would, for everybody, the date of the event. I'm marking my calendar. It's just really fun. And since you're so focused at BACA Wines on Zinfandel, I feel compelled to mention that.
No, I appreciate it.
So, I know that your family has been, so January 29th, Saturday, January 29th is the grand tasting in downtown San Francisco. So I know your family has been big on bringing technology into the wine biz. what winemaking and state-of-the-art technology and equipment do you guys use, you and your team, to make the wines?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a whole host of um, techniques and equipment that we use, and I probably will highlight one of them. We have something called an optical sorter that we were actually, my parents at least, at HALL Wines, when we first acquired the machine, we were one of the first wineries in California to have one. Now there have been other wineries that have also acquired them, and they're used in other types of agricultural businesses as well. But what's really unique about the optical sorter is it's basically a large machine that takes pictures of berries and can sort the good berries from the bad berries with a puff of air. And so for something like Zinfandel, that's incredibly useful and can really make the difference between, in my mind at least, an amazing Zinfandel and an okay Zinfandel, because Zinfandel is a notoriously unevenly ripening grape. And so when you get a cluster of berries, of Zinfandel berries, you'll see on the same cluster perfectly green berries, perfectly ripe berries, things all the way in between and up to raisins. And so if we, our winemakers, pick the grapes that we would like to, that we would say are the perfect grapes, you take basically a picture of that in the machine. And then once the berries are destemmed and they go through the optical sorter, it will then, because of the pictures, really fast move the good berries to one side and the bad berries to the other that end up being in compost. And it sounds simple, but it does the work more quickly and more accurately than humans do. We are always about experimentation at our winery, and we've done taste tests between wines that have been optically sorted and wines that haven't. And every single time, the optically sorted wines are better. And so we really value this machine as one of our most state-of-the-art pieces of equipment. We also have a whole host of other things at our disposal that have been really special for us. We use gravity flow machinery. So our whole winery is built up to be gravity flow. And if you think about gravity flow, for those of you guys that may not know what that is, if you're on a one-story building, you have to use all kinds of things like pumps and other kinds of machinery to move over, to move the wine around. But if you have a 2-level or more building like we do, you can actually very gently drop grapes into fermentation tanks and do all kinds of other things a lot more gently and without pressing too hard. If you press grapes too hard, that can result in some bitterness, which you really don't want in any wine. So those are a couple examples. We also do experimentation with concrete. One of our wines that we're going to be trying today, our white wine, was fermented partially in concrete, and that can also add some roundness. But that was a very long answer to your question, but we're always trying to experiment and use the best equipment we can to produce the best quality wine that we can.
I want to show the concrete tanks. I'm fascinated with these concrete tanks that you have.
Sure.
Which look amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Let me see if I can share this. Can you see this? The concrete tanks here.
Yes.
Like these look really state of the art. When you talk about technology and winemaking, these look amazing.
Thank you. Yes, and concrete tanks add something different than stainless steel can. Stainless steel is a neutral environment. I mean, I know you know this, Sam, but for everyone else's benefit, stainless steel is a neutral environment, and it's really preserving, the fruit flavors in the wine and providing a good place for the wine to ferment or to be stored. But concrete adds another element of really providing some roundness to the wine, a little bit more fullness. It also can impart some minerality that we like. Our winemaking team and some of our senior team members, we went on a trip to France a few years ago, and we saw that some of these amazing wineries in Burgundy were using concrete, and then we got inspired by that. So we brought that back to our facility. Well, we didn't physically bring it back; that would be extremely heavy. But we took back that notion and then ordered some concrete tanks.
Very, very interesting. So we have a question from Caleb. What is your favorite food, Jennifer, to pair Zinfandel with?
My favorite food to pair Zinfandel with is probably pizza. I think Italian foods, I think, pair really wonderfully with Zinfandel, you know, pastas, pizza. But my favorite all time is probably a good pizza.
You are a woman after my own heart. I love Zinfandel, big, beautiful California red Zinfandel with pizza. It's just, that to me is heaven.
Totally.
Great pairing. Question on the concrete tanks. Scott mentioned with concrete being mostly sand / rock, how does that impact the grapes and the taste of the wine? It's a great question.
Yeah, it is a great question. I mean, I think we see a couple things, like wines that are lighter bodied become more full bodied in concrete, but also, especially because you're calling out the rock aspect of it, we definitely see the minerality. You know, if you try wines that come from soils that are very rocky, you get a little more minerality in that wine. And I think that also comes through with concrete, which is something that I really like. And if those of you don't know what minerality means, it's often that element in a wine that you can't really put your finger on. It's something that's a little different. It's not fruit flavor. And it's not, you know, some of these secondary, tertiary flavors. It's a little unique, like a whetstone is what it tastes like.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I would like to be able to describe minerality, but you just did it much better than I could. And
Wow.
I don't think about it. I use the word minerality when I'm tasting wine and leading tours and things, but I think giving it a good explainer is really helpful. And I think that, you know, that's one way that's really on target. Do the tanks have to be cleaned in a special solution? Do you use the same tanks for the same wines that you're making? How do you use them, and how do you maintain the concrete tanks?
You know, I don't know because I'm not part of the cleaning. We probably do have to clean them differently than we clean our other tanks. But I'll find out and let you know, Nancy. I would be interested myself. Do you need to use the same tanks for the same wines that you're making? Yes. So by that, I think what you mean is,
if you use a tank for Zinfandel of a certain style or type, or as opposed to like, you know, white wine that you were fermenting in those concrete tanks, you would keep using it for that same type?
Yes, we would. I mean, we do oftentimes, like in a vintage, you know, we will maybe put 50% of it in oak and then 50% of it in concrete, and then we mix that together. So I don't know if that fully answers Nancy's question, but we wouldn't use in one harvest cycle, we wouldn't use the same tank for multiple purposes necessarily.
Got it. Let's talk a little bit about the vineyards, because you can see in my background here, and I think is that Lake Sonoma that I have behind me there all the way back?
That's Lake Sonoma, and it's one of my favorite pictures that our winemaker Allison took on her iPhone last year.
I mean, it's so beautiful, but it's rugged. I mean, it's in some ways a little bit different than other parts of California. And then I do want to share my screen and show people the Rock Pile vineyard, which to me is like just amazing and well named. I think this is it, right, Jennifer, here that I have?
That is our Rock Pile vineyard. Yes, you can see it's super steep, really hard actually to pick those grapes, but it's stunning. Would you like me to explain that, Sam, or were you going to say something else?
I would love it, because all I know is that they're great wines that come out of Rock Pile.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I couldn't tell you why or what the sort of origins of being a wine growing area.
Definitely. So Sam mentioned that our tasting room and our sort of home base is located in Healdsburg, which is in Dry Creek. Right next to Dry Creek is its own AVA called Rock Pile. AVA means basically California, or wine growing region is what AVA means. And so Rock Pile is actually the newest wine growing region in all of California. And it was pioneered by a family called the Moritsons, who they were homesteaders in this area, But then they decided to, along with other families, actually create Lake Sonoma. Lake Sonoma is a man-made lake. And because of Lake Sonoma, said another way, there would be no rock pile wine growing region if there wasn't a Lake Sonoma. And that's because the cool breeze comes up from Lake Sonoma to cool the grapes, and it provides a really nice level of acidity for those grapes. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as interesting. It would just be hot for longer. But main characteristics of rock pile is that it's super high in elevation, above the fog line. So grapes that are grown on hillside tend to be smaller in size. If you think about the ratio of the grape skin to the pulp, you know, it's going to be more, it's going to be higher in tannins, so more intense flavors. People that like bigger, bolder Zinfandels, they're maybe more akin to a Cabernet like rock pile Zins. And they have a really unique characteristic, kind of similar to Scott's question earlier about the rock. It's super rocky soil, just like the name implies. So it has this really lovely minerality that comes both from the rocky soil as well as from that cooler temperature in the evenings. But I think another reason why it's become a cult wine growing region is it's very small. So there's only a handful of producers that even get a chance to make wine from there. So it's a great region and very hard to get. And we're very lucky to make a wine from there.
Here's another shot looking down at the lake, right? And that's, you get a sense of the elevation.
Mm-hmm.
And is this from Rockpile, or is this from a different vineyard?
No, that's also from Rockpile. We actually work with 3 vineyards there. So I believe this is the Jack Florence vineyard, I think. And so the vineyard that you were looking at before, I think, was Rocky Ridge, which was a different vineyard. So they look different only because they're different vantage points. They're not exactly the same vineyard, but they're very close by.
All right, so we have a couple of questions here, Jennifer, and then we're going to start tasting wines. So from Jeff, Rockpile Wines rock. So I'm sure this wine rocks. How does one get a bottle? Is it available in New York? Well, Jeff, you can order from BACA Wines, and you can use take advantage of the website offer that they have. But I do believe you do have distribution in New York as well, Jennifer. Yes.
We do, yeah. We have distribution in about 13 states, one of them being New York. And this actually happens to be a wine that we distribute as well as sell direct from the winery. It's called our Cat's Cradle Rockpile Zinfandel. And you can get it from our website, like you mentioned, bacawines.com, or in select stores and restaurants in New York. Mm-hmm.
And then another question, what's the level of chemical herbicides in the winemaking process for you guys and your vineyard?
Sure. Yeah, so all of our vineyards are either organically farmed or sustainably farmed. So there's a couple of vineyards that have been very tricky and have been prone to rot that are not 100% organic, but are sustainable. So we really try to limit the amount of chemicals that are used in the vineyard, if at all. You know, if anything, you know, maybe a little bit of sulfur, but we're really trying to be as minimalist as possible in the vineyard. And our winemaking and vineyard teams are out there a lot doing canopy management, which is, you know, picking the leaves off of the grapes, making sure that everything is looking pristine so that we don't have to use a lot of chemical intervention. And then on the winemaking side, we make all of our wines unfined and unfiltered. So we really don't use really chemicals at all. And that only can happen if you keep a super clean winemaking facility so that you don't allow microbes, I think that's the word, microbes to grow, and other kinds of you know, bad things that you would normally need chemicals to keep at bay. But so far, we really have been trying to limit intervention as much as possible on that end.
Always a good idea. I mean, when you've got the kind of scenery and nature that you have, and Mother Nature is your partner, that's a good strategy. All right, so what wines are we tasting this evening, Jennifer? I think we're going to start with the rosé, yeah?
Yes, we're going to start with our rosé. We've got 4 wines today, a rosé, a white wine, and 2 Zinfandels. So we're going to start with our BACA Ring Around the Rosé. You've got an awesome picture up there. I love the graphics. So this is about a third of a bottle. So we sell them in 3 packs, which equal a bottle. Our first vintage, this is our second vintage. Our first vintage last year, I did was our first foray into canning. And I did a 375 milliliter, which is basically like a Coke can. And turns out that's way too much of a bottle to put into a can.
That's half a bottle. That's half a bottle of wine.
It's half a bottle.
It's dangerous. You get one of those out, people think they're drinking a Sprite. And they just not that.
I can't tell you how many parties I was at where people were drinking, because I would, I often, when I go, people like inviting me to parties because I bring wine. I'm sure the same for you, Sam.
Exactly.
And people were walking around being like, I don't know why I'm feeling a little, toasty. But anyway, this is our second vintage of our rosé. That's true, Scott. There is nothing wrong with too much wine. But so I purposefully canned it. I mentioned earlier, our whole philosophy at BACA is that life's an adventure. And so I thought how great to make a wine that you could actually just bring with you on a hike, to the beach, stick it in a cooler. You've probably noticed there's a huge trend right now of canning wines and also all kinds of other like spritzers and wines or alcoholic beverages people like to put in cans. So it's been a good timing for us. But this is not just pretty to look at, but it's also a wine that I'm very proud of. We made it and into a very fine wine. It's a rosé of Zinfandel, which is unusual. You don't see a lot of rosé of Zinfandels. It has this really pretty pink color, light pink color. And what I love about it is it has a lot of great fruit flavors. For me, I get strawberries really strongly in this wine. And then also it has just this really nice lift of acidity. So that combination of fruit flavors and also acid just makes it a really good food pairing wine. And summer, especially, I'm sure it's still hot in New York, but especially in California, a nice summer drinking wine too.
Jennifer, when you open a can of this Ring Around the Rosé, do you let it breathe? Do you pour the glass and then let it work in the glass a bit? Because obviously the can there's no oxygen getting into that vessel.
Right. Yeah, I do both. If I'm out and about, I will just drink it right from the can. I actually really enjoy doing that. I think it tastes great just straight. But I think it's probably just a force of habit that I tend to pour it usually and swirl it to get that oxidation a little bit. But I don't think it really needs it. It's still got, so much fresh fruit flavors. And as you guys know, rosé is meant to be drunk, at least in California, within the first year or two of canning or bottling. So it still tastes great right out of the bat.
It's rosés from anywhere in the world meant to be consumed straight away. No delay, no aging. Is there a favorite food you like with this rosé?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of pairing like with like. So, I mentioned earlier I get strawberries on this wine. I really like to pair this with a beautiful salad with some strawberries in the salad. I think it also goes with all kinds of seafood, shellfish, cheeses. But I think I mentioned before that I'm vegetarian, so for me, like a salad with some strawberries in it and maybe like a nice balsamic dressing, I think it's really delicious with that.
Excellent. All right, so should we move on to the next one? So just to be clear, that the Ring Around the Rosé is $24 for 3 cans.
Right.
And each can is how many?
It's 250 milliliters, which is about a third, or it's exactly a third of a bottle.
A third of a bottle. Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, so the next one is the Stargazing.
I was gonna say it's the perfect wine for it's a glass and a half, I would say. A little more than a glass.
Absolutely. So the next one is a Stargazing White. It's a single varietal, I believe. It's Marsanne Roussanne is the grape?
Yeah, actually it's both varietals. It's 50% Roussanne, 50% Marsanne. So, but you generally get them together. So, yeah, it's a Roussanne Marsanne.
I am going to put it up on the screen. Tell us about this and like what are the tasting notes and what's the perfect occasion to drink this wine?
Sure. So I love this wine. You know, we already make a Sauvignon Blanc at Hall, and then at our sister winery at Walt, we make a Chardonnay, or actually a couple different Chardonnays. So when I was looking to make a white wine for BACA, we wanted to look outside of those two regions, and we were looking for something. For me, I've always loved Rhone whites, and so I thought it would be really great if we could do something that was a little unusual from the Rhone region of France originally. And so we found this really great, cool vineyard up in Mendocino called Spirit Canyon. And it's really got a lot of history, and we loved the owner of it and the story of it, and in particular, the grapes that they grow. And so this vineyard grows Roussanne and Marsanne. Those are two grapes that traditionally come from France, from the Rhone region. Roussanne, they're both white grapes, but Roussanne has a little bit of a reddish tint. The word Roussanne actually means to redden in French. And together, they're really a perfect pair. You know, I guess you could say they're very complementary. So, you know, one on its own might be a little bit too acidic, and then one on the other might be a little bit too fruity or too round. But I think together they really form a perfect relationship of having a really nice weight to the wine and roundness, but also having a lovely sort of peach stone. I always get peach from this wine, and also really nice acid. So it's actually been, it's our first time we've made this wine in 2019, but it's turned out to be a huge hit, and we're selling it like crazy. It's really been a fan favorite and mine as well.
I want to ask everybody watching, if you would join in the chat and let us know if you have had Roussanne or Marsanne wine made from those grapes, because they're not the most common French grapes. They are off the beaten path, but sometimes you find some of the most magical wines. So Diane, as he says, yes, I am actually not that familiar with either of the grape varietals. And I'm fascinated with this as a blend that, you know, what are the tasting notes on this? What are the aromatics, and what's this wine all about?
Yeah. And, you know, and by the way, I'd never had it either until we started making it. So
that makes me feel better, Jennifer.
Well, you know, there's so many varietals out there, and I know you cover the whole world. So how would you have necessarily covered this? But there are some really great ones from France as well as some other American producers. But I'm hoping that we become the best producer of Roussanne Marsanne, maybe. The tasting notes are very fresh. So I would say there's, you know, stone fruit like peach. I also get flowers. You know, our winemaker likes to say there's dried flowers. There's just a really nice floral scent to it. What I like about it, and this is a total butchering of this because it's not really this, but I love Sauvignon Blanc because of the lightness of it and the floral characteristics of it. But I also like Chardonnay because of the body of it, although there's very little aromatics in Chardonnay. For me, this is a really good sort of halfway point where it has the body like a Chardonnay has, but it also has that beautiful aromatics like a Sauvignon Blanc. Now, I think a lot of people would say you shouldn't compare those two, but that's what I would say.
And is it stainless steel fermented? No oak on this wine?
No, we actually, we do it both in neutral oak. So neutral oak, meaning that it's been used enough that there's really very little toast on it. You don't get any of the wood characteristics, but you still get the body that you get from being in the oak. And then part of it, we actually also put in concrete tanks. We got these really cool, not the pictures that you showed before, but we have these smaller concrete tanks we got from a local company in Sonoma that we aged this in, and I'm really a fan of how that's turned out.
I'm dying to dive into this one.
Yeah.
I love a great, refreshing white blend. I'm so impressed with our audience too. I mean, a bunch of people hit the chat and we're like, "Yep, been drinking Roussanne Marsanne for years." So I've got some catching up to do. What is your kind of favorite pairing with this? I mean, a lot of times we say about rosé, hey, just bring it to the beach, bring it to the pool. No need to pair it with anything. Does this wine make you thirsty or hungry?
I think that this has a richness to it, almost like a Viognier has like a little bit of that oiliness to it where you might crave some food. So I think a perfect pairing for this would be like a rich shellfish, like a lobster or a crab, I think would go really well with it. I mentioned that I'm vegetarian. For me, I actually had this a couple days ago with pad thai, of all things. And it actually ended up being a perfect
Yeah.
pairing. It was actually like so perfect. Take out from this Thai place that I like. And for whatever reason, I think the pairing was just spot on. So it had a little bit of spiciness, but not too much. And it was a good one.
I imagine this would also be good with like a really good Greek meal. There's a lot of like the dips and vegetables and the Greek salad and like authentic Greek cuisine.
Totally.
Because it needs a little bit of oomph in the wine, but it also needs some finesse too. Mediterranean style.
All this talk about food is making me hungry.
Exactly. It's dinner time here in New York. All right, so I think we're moving on next to the Double Dutch Zin. Is that right?
That's right. Let me pour it. So this is a really cool wine, and I think those of you guys who have been watching these events for a while might remember Janelle Ducey, who has a lovely winery down in Paso Robles. Well, we buy fruit.
Ducey wine.
Exactly.
Yep, Janelle Ducey. She was on this broadcast last September.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I can't believe we've been in pandemic for so long. Crazy. I mean, were you doing these events pre-COVID too? Or?
We were not. We were so busy doing in-person events that we didn't have time to do it in live streaming.
Yeah. Well, very lucky for me that you are doing these. So those of you guys watching might be familiar from that one back in September. But this wine comes from a vineyard down in Paso Robles owned by the Ducey family. So Janelle is the 5th generation of a family that has a huge history down in Paso Robles. Paso Robles is a really cool wine growing region in California that has the greatest, bear with me, this is going to be geeky. It's got the greatest diurnal temperature shift of any wine growing region in California. And diurnal temperature shift means the difference between the temperature during the day and nighttime. And why that's useful in Zinfandel is that during the day, it gets to very hot temperatures, which means you get those really wonderful fruit characteristics. And then also at the nighttime, when it cools down, you still preserve the freshness and the acidity of the wine. So those two things together, to me, really exemplifies a great Paso Robles wine of lots of great fruit, but still nice acidity. So this wine comes from that area. We love it. I call it Double Dutch for a couple of reasons. One, it comes from a region called the Templeton Gap in Paso Robles, which is a gap between 2 mountain ranges. And so it's got double curving lines of mountain ranges. It also is alliteration after Janelle's grandfather, Dante Ducey, who was one of the original planters of this vineyard. And this is a great wine. I call this our crowd pleaser in a good way, meaning that if I don't know what kind of wine someone likes, I often will suggest this wine to them because it has a lot of oomph to it, but it's not overpowering. And it tends to appease all kinds of taste buds. And it's also a nice standalone wine. You don't have to pair it with a food necessarily because it's light enough that it's still enjoyable without having something really robust to pair it with, but it's still very food friendly.
So, and I love the color of this wine. I mean, I can just see, look at it, it's that inky purple black. Mm-hmm. This is a classic California Zinfandel. This is what made me fall in love with wine, was discovering these Zinfandels.
Totally. I agree. Sometimes people call them juicy. They're just very, there's so many good things about it. It's not a sweet wine. It's obviously we ferment it until dry, but the fruit flavors give it that perception of sweetness that I love so much. Just really well balanced. I'm really proud of what our winemaking team did. And I will mention that it's a really cool, yeah, Myra's saying yum. I know, I wish I could share it with you through the screen. I promise you it's super good. The vineyard itself is really cool. It's dry farmed, meaning they don't ever irrigate it. And in a really hot region, that's very unusual. The reason why they're able to do that is because it's a historic vineyard that's head trained. So if you look on the picture of the vineyard behind Sam, you'll see that those vines are on trellises, posts with wires, really neatly stacked. But a head trained vine is very gnarly looking. It's basically like a freestanding tree that has limbs going in each direction. And you get those really from older vineyards that often were planted many generations ago. And they don't produce as many grapes, but what they do produce is really intense in its in terms of the quality of the grapes that it produces. It's kind of like a person. As you get older, you become more efficient with your time and become finer with age. And then vines are the same, especially in Zinfandel. So they don't need to be watered because they've really self-regulated, and the fruit they produce are really great. And so the Ducey family does things very old-fashioned. The grandfather, Mike Ducey, still rides around on the same tractor that his grandfather had on the property. And one other thing that we do that's unusual is, we make all of our wine up in wine country up in Northern California at our main facility in St. Helena. And so we pick the grapes generally in the middle of the night when it's the coolest temperature, so like 3 a.m. usually. And then we put the grapes on a refrigerated truck, and then we drive it up to our facility in St. Helena where we make it so that the grapes still stay fresh and intact, because it's really important to us for our winemaking style that the grapes are still fresh when we're making the wine.
So great. And this is a very accessible, like really high quality California's in. It's price accessible at $35. What's the difference between this one and the I Spy Zin, which is our fourth wine?
Yeah.
I'm curious because, people might think, oh, well, they're both California Zinfandels. They're kind of the same. But that's not the case.
Yeah, no, they're quite different. So, I think what's so amazing, those of you guys who, I know you guys do wine tastings. What I think is so cool is to get two wines that are the same varietal, like these two are both Zins, but to try them side by side, especially when they're from the same vintage. So these are both 2018s. Were made in almost the exact same way in our facility. The only difference is the location. So the first one comes from down in Paso Robles, which is a warmer region. And then the second one comes from, I Spy comes from up in Napa, from a famous area called Howell Mountain that makes a lot of Cabernets that you may have heard of from Howell Mountain. And it's a little bit cooler of a region. It's also 2,400 feet in elevation. So one is more valley floor fruit. The other one is more mountainside fruit. And they're very different in terms of their taste. You can't say one is better than the other. They're just different. And it's kind of fun to be able to try both side by side.
Is the price more of a function of that grapes from Napa are just more expensive as raw material than grapes from Paso Robles?
That's part of it. The other reason why we priced it the way we did at 35 was because this one we go into the wholesale market with. So you'll find Double Dutch in restaurants. And in particular, we wanted to be able to put our Double Dutch wine on by the glass wine list so that when you go into a restaurant, you might see it as like a by the glass. And so in order to do that, it's just very competitive. So we had to bring the price down. So that's the main reason. But grape prices are more expensive up in Napa, especially, and even more so from this area, from Howell Mountain, than they are down in Paso Robles. So from an economic standpoint, it also worked out.
Now, is I Spy 100% Zinfandel grapes, or is it like 85% and then a little bit of other?
Yeah, it's actually 97% Zinfandel and it's 3% Petite Syrah, Petit Syrah is often a blending grape for Zinfandel, but you honestly wouldn't even know that it was there. You know, it adds a few elements like some really lovely color and rounds out the wine nicely, but it's a very small percentage.
Got it. So what's the, now I know you're vegan.
Yes.
But what would you, if you were a sommelier at a restaurant, what dish would you recommend to go with the I Spice?
So the I Spy is a bigger tannin wine. I think I mentioned it's from up on the hillside. And generally hillside grapes have more tannins. And so I would pair it with something heartier. Kurt says barbecue. I agree with you, Kurt. I think Zinfandel as a whole goes well with barbecue, and this one would also be great. I also think a really hearty Italian dish, like a pasta carbonara, something else that's like really hearty and rich. This would be a really, really good pairing with.
Yep. Yeah, you mentioned this earlier, and I've never gone wrong with the rule of thumb that the size of the wine and the size of the food need to be in proportion with each other. So the bigger the food, the bigger the wine, and vice versa.
Definitely.
Well, these are 4 great ones. And I know that you have some other amazing wines in your portfolio, and at BACA, and it's so great visiting with you. I want to see if anybody has any additional questions. I'm going to put up in my background just in case anybody is curious and wants to see how do we get these wines. You go to BACAWines.com, and let me share that on my screen. Here it is. And these are the 4 wines. By the way, I have a question for you, Jennifer. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if someone were to choose like 2 of these or 3 of these, and then 1 or 2 other wines from the website, would the shipping offer automatically apply also?
You know what? It should, but if it doesn't, please email me. I'll give you guys, I'm going to put in the chat my email address. So if you have any issues with it, because I don't actually know how our team set up the back end. So if you have any problems, email me and I can help you with it. Is New Jersey or Pennsylvania other states the wine is available? Okay, so there's like 13 states we can't ship to, and I always forget what states those are. So
probably, I mean, it's possible that New Jersey or Pennsylvania are in those 13, but it's also more likely that it's like Utah, Alabama, Kentucky, because those are the ones where it's always a problem to ship.
I definitely know we can't do there. Let me see if I can, while we're doing this, look it up. But if not, email me, Kurt, and I can definitely answer that question.
And then in a state that you ship to, you guys ship directly from the winery, right?
We do. We ship directly from the winery. We have a license to ship to almost all the states except for the, I mentioned there was a handful of states that we can't ship to. But we do, we ship to all kinds of people. We also have a wine club that's pretty active around the country. I think I'm actually going to be in New York for a couple of events. Can't ship to, oh, Caleb. Thanks, Caleb. Caleb works with me. We can't ship to New Jersey. Appreciate that. Caleb, can we ship to Pennsylvania?
While you're at it, Caleb. Yes.
Okay. Yay.
Ira, you're in luck.
Yay, we can. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, thanks, guys. I feel like I'm on, what's that show where you have the lifeline, where you can like ask other people to help you? That's what I feel like I'm on.
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? What is the show?
We definitely ship to Florida. I think it is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire that I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Well, this has been just an education in all things California in terms of wine and grape growing regions. I love traveling around the state with you, Jennifer, and talking about Paso Robles and then up to Napa and Sonoma. And I can't wait to come out and visit. You guys have a wonderful tasting room and hospitality operation right there at the winery. And, you know, I want to focus on BACA, but HALL and WALT wines are pretty amazing too. Was it HALL that got the 100-point Robert Parker score?
Yeah, we've actually gotten 5 100 points
Okay.
at Hall. And then what really put us on the map was we had the #2 wine of the year about 8 years ago. So yeah, but altogether, I think somebody in our company calculated how many over 90+ points we got, and it was some insane amount that I won't even mention, but we're very blessed. I'll say that.
So now I'm just curious, the 5 100-point Robert Parker rated wines, were they all HALL or was it a combination of HALL and WALT?
They were all HALL, but I'll say
HALL.
one thing, which is, you know, there are different, what do you call it? Sort of trends in how you give points. It's really rare. You really don't see Pinot Noirs that get points over 95, whereas Cabernets, you do see points that get, you know, 99, 100. So I think you have to calibrate the scores. But yeah, all the 5 were on our 5 Cabernet wines.
Well, that is great. Jennifer, thank you so much for doing this. It's been a pleasure visiting with you and learning about the wines, and I can't wait to dig in. I'm getting my Stargazing White ready for my
Good.
next Greek meal or my pad thai. We thank you everybody for tuning in. Join us next week. We are doing an afternoon session, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. We are going to Apulia in southern Italy, and we're going to meet with basically the king of Primitivo, the winemaker and founder there that just is an unbelievable resource and knowledge base all about Primitivo, which is actually the cousin of Zinfandel. It's the great.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to tune in for that. That sounds amazing.
It's going to be amazing. I can't wait to do it, and I want to go visit that winery too. So
Yeah.
all right, guys. Well, thank you again for tuning in, Jennifer. Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you very soon. Thanks
Cheers.
all.
Thanks.
Cheers.